DeMeco Ryans says the offensive line will be better in 2025, but do you believe it? I'll also revisit the 2025 Texans schedule with my friend Mr. 713 Ruben Calvillo. Today's show will be fun, so stick around for some Texan talk.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town. This one is for Texan fans all around. This is the Locked On Texan podcast. I'm your Texans football analyst and credential media member, John Hickman. Thank you for making Locked On Texans your first listen of the day. A special shout out to our everydayers from the Himalayas coming back again and again. You guys are family, so come on in. Take your shoes off, kick your feet up, and let's talk Texans. And for my first-time listeners and viewers, thank you for making this show a part of your rotation today. Come on back for tomorrow's show, and we'll have some more fun. On today's show, we'll be looking at leading by example. The Houston Texans have some great vets on their roster. What does leading by example look like for those vets coming into 2025? Again, we're going to circle back to the 2025 schedule predictions and DeMeco Ryans in his statement. The offensive line will be better. Do you guys believe that or not? The entire show will be done with my friend Ruben Calvillo, Mr. 713. So it's going to be an exciting show. Stick around for Locked On Texans Talk because we're about to dive into it in 3, 2. It's Mr. 713, and I'll call myself Mr. 2-Way-1, but this is an H-Town podcast today for our Locked On Texan listeners and viewers. Man, I'm super excited about our conversations that we will have. And I want to open up with this question right here, because the last time you came on over to the show, Ruben, you were unimpressed with the offensive line moves the Houston Texans had made during the offseason. This was more so of a pre-draft, but now with the addition of rookie Ariante Ursery, do you feel a little bit more comfortable in the offensive line situation right now, or do you still have your concerns?
I've talked myself into being comfortable, and and that happened last night at the Houston Texans season ticket members event, right? So, shout out to the Houston Texans, right? Count Hannah McNair. I don't think a lot of other teams would put their GM and head coach in front of, season ticket members and let them ask questions. John, when I tell you that more than half of the questions were about the offensive line, it was insane, because the first question came from the sweet old lady. Her first few words: guys, last year CJ Shy was running for his life. The crowd immediately was like, oh, okay, well, we're starting off hot. And when you see DeMeco say, yeah, we think the offensive line is going to be better, and they keep on reiterating that, you kind of wonder, and what I said last episode, if that when you talk about culture, that if one guy can mess up your culture, did you have a culture to begin with? Maybe Laramie Tunsil, was just not a culture guy, a swarmer. And I see the confidence not only with him, but GM Nick Casario as well, as he was answering the questions about the O-line. In regards to what's going to be on the field, I still don't know, Hickman. I like Ariante Ursery, but I think this is that was a move for the future. I think he could be, one of your starting tackles next year, but that's next year. In regards to 2025, I think it's still the same. We don't know what this O-line unit's going to be. I am very concerned. A lot of people should be very concerned, because we know what it was last year. CJ Stroud, second most sacked quarterback in the NFL. And now you're seeing an offensive line without, a Pro Bowl left tackle. So, I'm still concerned, but hearing my head coach, who is my leader, tell me that things are going to be all right, man, I have to fall in line.
Now, you did a good job of asking Nick Casario, DeMeco Ryans a good question, right? And that was your, I'm going to call it the preface to when you do get in the building. They'll know who you are. Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, those two guys will come in and fill voids at the wide receiver position in that group where Houston absolutely needs it. No Tank Dell, no Stephon Diggs. and they're going to need those guys to be productive essentially day one, especially Jaden Higgins. What are your thoughts about those two young receivers for Houston and their potential day one impact?
I think one of these two has the opportunity to just explode on the field. And, that's either going to be up to those two gentlemen. But with Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noah Hickman, you set up your wide receiver room for the future. And one of these two guys is going to be your wide receiver one when Nico Collins, in a couple of years from now is starting to decline. So I like the move there. When you look at these two guys, man, we talked about Jaden Higgins being a Nico Collins clone. I feel the same thing about Jalen Noah being a Tank Dell clone. Not a big receiver, but someone who is electric, someone who could, make moves with the ball in his hands. I think they're both really going to be impactful year one, but I think one of the two, Hickman, is just going to absolutely just soar. And when you have a number one wide receiver in Nico Collins, and he's one of the best when healthy, he's going to demand extra attention. So either Higgins or Noel, they got to, take advantage of those one-on-one opportunities. I'm excited to see who it is. But yes, these two rookies are going to be impactful. I wonder who's going to be the most impactful.
It's kind of funny. The Houston Texan fan base have been wanting a Higgins here. For years, it was T. Higgins. They finally got a Higgins, and it's Jaden Higgins, a receiver who I personally think, yes, he does mirror Nico Collins in a lot of ways, and I think that was a smart idea by the front office and the Texans brass to just look at everything that helped the Houston Texan offense be productive and say, how about we double up on that? And a part of that is just going to go get a guy that can mirror and copy some of the things your number one guy can do. So I believe that Jaden Higgins will be one of those receivers. Well, I don't know if he's going to be a 1,000-yard receiving season. But I do look at him like a 750, 800 yards.
Perfect. I love it.
That's perfect.
I love it.
Also combined with Christian Kirk and his ability to, when he's healthy, to be an impactful player.
And that's who people are forgetting about. And hey, yesterday at the party, DeMeco Ryans himself brought up Justin Watson and how,
saw that.
So I don't know what this wide receiver room has cooking, but Hickman, this is the first time in I think a long time I feel comfortable about the wide receiver room in the future of it. It wasn't like last year, right? Because we knew Stephon Diggs was just the cherry on top, 1-year deal. With these two here, coming in here, and I'm talking about the rookies, man, they're just going to be growing with CJ Stroud. When he's in his prime, they're going to be right there, man, just feeding. I can't wait.
I got a quick question for you, man. Has there been a specific moment where you thought to yourself, I can't wait to circle back to this moment, because whatever it is, it could either go very good for Houston or very bad for Houston? And I'm going to make it a little bit difficult for you. Remove offensive line away from that. Don't even bring offensive line to your thought process. Has there been another moment where you was like, man, I don't know, this could work out if it's perfect, but I'm not sure?
Well, you look at your new offensive coordinator, Nick Caley, when we were discussing whether you want to go with the first-time play caller or someone with experience. And if this is a perfect scenario and Nick Caley is exactly the man for the job, and we're talking about a successful offense, dude, I could only fathom what this team can become, because the defense is already there, Hickman. It's a Super Bowl caliber defense. It was a Super Bowl caliber defense before CJ Gardner-Johnson got there. The offense was just a letdown. And if the Texans got it right, if Nick Caley truly is the guy to unlock CJ's shot, because we know he's the franchise, but there's another level than being a franchise quarterback. There's no one that they can get things done. And if we see that in year 3, I think it's going to be real special. And I bring in the offensive line because in a perfect world, if the offensive line works, I would never, ever question General Manager Nick Caserio on any of his moves, because when you really think about it, man, they're pushing their chips in the table. It was a gutsy move, trading away a Pro Bowl left tackle right when your quarterback was
the
just
right move.
second.
It was the right move. To me, it was the right move.
And it's starting to feel that way because when you saw the Washington Commanders OTAs, you know who was not there? Laramie Tunsil. I know some Commanders fans, felt some type of way about that. Houston Texans fans were not surprised at all about that. But then when you look at Houston, you see that everyone was participating at OTAs, and you think about the camaraderie that these boys are already building right now.
Right.
It's going to go well for the season. And then you add on that the new offensive coordinator and seeing the picture of Nick Caley taking handoffs from Davis Mills. I mean, that got the blood going, man. I feel like he's a swarmer. So in a perfect world, if Nick Caley was in fact the right hire, this team is going to be special.
I love how the fans can find something to get excited about. Nick Caley getting handoffs from Davis Mills. That excites everybody. But what also has been,
you didn't see that last year.
You didn't see it from Bobby. Maybe he just had the play sheet and was worrying about everything else in the pressures of 2024.
That big ass hat too.
Going into his second year. But also something that's getting everybody excited right now is the 2025 schedules. So when we come back, we got to talk it. We got more Texans talk on the way, guys. Mr. 713, I'm going to just say Mr. 281. We holding it down. More Locked On Texans talk on the way. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network that you create and build, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions, then quickly get your job out in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And also, here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Thank you for staying locked in on the Locked On Texans podcast. Now, before we talk more Texans talk, Ruben, for you, how do you balance covering the team, being critical of the team, being fair when you cover the team, while also still being connected to the fan base?
It's very hard, and this is why I love the city of Houston, because they can spot what's real and what's fake from a mile away. And me, it's very hard to not be overly critical and be a prisoner of the moment. And I will say I've grown into that role. First couple of years, man, I was just talking however I wanted to talk, but then I realized that just wasn't the way to go. We have to walk a thin line, John Hickman, and it's so hard because how much I love this Houston Texans team, right? Like when I think about this team, some of the best memories in my life, was around a Houston Texans football game. I remember the first game I was at, it was, Andre Johnson, his 3-touchdown, 197-yard game against Indianapolis Colts on Sunday Night Football. Like I remember, that moment, and of course it ended in heartbreak, but I love this team, so it was very hard to navigate that. Of course, as you talk to experienced people like yourself, like Mr. John Hickman and other great guys who are in the media, you get to learn off them. You get to pick up some of the things that work, and I'm happy to say he's got me here. So thank you, Mr. Hickman. But it is hard, though, especially when you got a couple in you, right? Like once I feel that alcohol, in the system, I'm like, oh, this Texans team has me feeling some type of way.
They will run your blood pressure up. And I think when we look at the schedule, there are some games out there where you can see the Texans possibly walking away from it and saying, you know what, easy Sunday for us. I can enjoy my Sunday without being stressed out. But then there's some games, right? You look at Baltimore. Haven't been able to beat Baltimore. You're looking at opening up the season against the LA Rams. And so what are your thoughts on the schedule release, the too early to tell edition? Like what games are you looking on that schedule and saying, whoo, the Texans have to be ready. Everything that they're working towards this offseason, they need to be ready to take on some of these teams.
So I look at 3 teams, and they were the same 3 teams that you looked at last year. the Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think that we would take this team serious if you once again lose 2 out of the 3. I think that the Texans are in a category where they're knocking on the door. But on the other side of the door, you have arguably the next great, GOAT in Patrick Mahomes, an MVP in Josh Allen, and one of my favorite quarterbacks ever, 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson. If you want to get into that tier, you have to beat at least 2 out of the 3. I'm looking at week 5 at Baltimore, Hickman, and it's like every time we play these guys, we know how it ends. I don't think we've scored an offensive touchdown in the DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud era against the Baltimore Ravens. I think that, the only touchdown was the Steven Sims punt return. Outside of that, you got embarrassed in front of Beyonce on Christmas. Like,
that was embarrassing.
Oh my God.
That was embarrassing.
I've never taken a beating like that, Hickman. I stood right here, the stream was on, and I said, we're gonna enjoy this butt whooping together. And man, it humbled me. So you gotta win 2 out of the 3. Of course, you're looking at Sunday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs. And every time I just hear that chant, it adds nightmares to me.
Yeah.
They've been in, a thorn in our side since Alex Smith. And if you remember, Niles Davis taken to the crib, opening wild card weekend in Houston. They rout us 30-0.
Shout out to Niles Davis, by the way.
Shout out to
his
Niles.
family.
Oh, yeah. You got to get a dub against the Kansas City Chiefs. You got to let them know that we can compete with you. With Buffalo, it's a little different because you got your win. You got your piece of skin from them. You can hang with Buffalo. You made Josh Allen look horrible out there. Of course, everyone looked horrible in Houston, but Josh Allen, one of the worst QBRs we ever seen. The other 2 guys you've barely touched in Lamar and Patrick Mahomes. So I'm looking at those 3, man, and if these Texans don't win 2 out of the 3, if they're not competitive in all 3 of them, I'm not going to be feeling good because we've seen this story before.
Yeah. Do you feel like the Texans have had an underrated offseason compared to the other 31 teams in the NFL? Not a lot of sexy names in free agency, maneuvered through the draft to get the guys that they want. Jaden Higgins was probably the sexiest pick of all of the picks. But you look at Jalen Smith being traded up for, making him Woody Marks. Do you feel like that how they assembled the roster and put it together as of right now, do you feel like they've had an underrated offseason, or is it still not enough?
I would say it was underrated because you went into the free agency period knowing that you needed offensive line help. And what did? You brought in a multitude of guys. You brought in a multitude of tackles, a multitude of interior offensive linemen as well. You have a lot of competition in that room. Also, you got yourself a new O-line coach in Cole Popovich. So you did your work there. The moves might have not been sexy, but they were made. In the draft, you potentially got one of your starting tackles of the future. I know Mr. Ariante said that he'll play wherever the team needs him to, but I think he's too big to be playing in the inside. But he's one of your tackles of the future. So in terms of that, and plus you add on your wide receiver core of the future is now set as well. It was very underrated. The moves weren't sexy, but these were moves that we're going to say, yeah, they worked out.
Yeah. When we come back, we got to look at what does leading by example look like for the vets in this on this roster. So we're going to close out Mr. 713. And again, I'm just donning myself today as Mr. 281. More Texans talk before we close out the show. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Thank you for making Locked On Texans your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. As training camps get closer and moves are being made, host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Ruben, this is where it's going to get fun. I'm going to mention a name, player, coach, whoever. And I want you to respond with what you want to see from that person. Now, the first name I'm going to throw out is the original doppelganger of Jaden Higgins, Nico Collins. What do you want to see from Nico this year?
I think you already saw it when he was getting some work in what the young guys and he was showing off on the Houston Texans Instagram story. But just really being that Andre role of leading by example. But I think Nico Collins has more of a attitude to him, rather than Andre. We saw his one where he just shoved down the Bears cornerback. But Nico really becoming the veteran of this O-line group. If things are running stale, I want to see him rally the troops, rally the boys, and let them know that if anything goes wrong, there's a reason why the fans say, 12's out there. And I just hope that not only him, but CJ as well, they grow into that leadership role, because this is now their offense.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is now
Great point.
Like, this is now the offense of CJ Stroud and Nico Collins, because now the conversations about Nico is when he's healthy, he's one of the best in the NFL. Knock on wood, he stays healthy, produced on the field. I already know what you're going to do that, but show me that you can wear a captain patch on your chest and wear it well.
Another long-time Texan, Titus Howard.
Just play wherever the Houston Texans need you to do. Wherever they need you to do. Hey, listen, the ghost of Bill O'Brien is still here. Is Titus and Kaimi, the last of the B.O.B. era?
I want to say yes.
Okay, I want to see Titus Howard start at multiple positions this year, letting us know that he truly will do whatever he needs for this team. We already saw him rework his contract extension, but also when you look at it, he's the OG of the O-line room now in terms of how long he's been here in Houston. And, I think that does deserve some respect. And say what you want about Titus. He's there when you need him. He's shown us he can be a reliable tackle. He's shown us that he can, move inside and give you some quality play. I want to see more of that this year, and also just be a leader in that O-line group. Be a swarmer, because when we talked about Titus Howard in the offseason, we said, hey, is Titus a swarmer?
Newcomer, Cam Robinson. And Cam is a guy that has gotten a bad rap from Texan fans. So let me just say this. Before he was traded to Minnesota, Cam was producing for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I wouldn't say he was elite, but he was playing some good football for Jacksonville. And I believe his numbers against Houston the first time they played here before he was traded, I believe he held I think he only let up maybe like 2 pressures, no sacks. So he had a very good game. He's a newcomer here in Houston. What are you looking for from the vet?
Well, I would agree. He gives you top 15 tackle play. And I think the one thing that Jacksonville Jaguars fans were upset with, that he wasn't, living up to his contract. And I'm giving Cam Robinson a longer leash. I think it's a hard thing to do, to go to a new team with a new offensive coordinator and immediately be their starting left tackle. We know what was there the previous 5 years. Pro Bowler Laramie Tunsil. I'm not asking him to be elite in pass protection, but be adequate in that. Show up on film in regards to the running game. We know that was something that Laramie lacked in. And dear God, Cam Robinson do not have a false start problem. But other than that, man, just, competing for this tackle spot, because he's only played left tackle in the league. So I think that's his spot to lose. Also, I think he himself should know that kind of towards the end of his career, be a mentor in that room as well. I know he is new in the locker room, but that shouldn't shy you away from, taking someone like Ariante Ursary under your wing. And I feel that way also with Trent Brown, man. Really coach these young boys.
I do want to add that correction: 0 pressures, 0 hurries, 0 quarterback hits, 0 sacks when he took on the Houston Texans in week 4. That's for the game where he started for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now I'm going to move away from the players. I'm going to move to the front office. Nick Caserio. That's a general manager. So what do you want to see from Nick this year?
I want to see him be active in terms of keeping an eye on the offensive line. Like, if things are not going well, don't be afraid to shake things up, because what you are telling us is that with new coaching, with competition, with new culture, this O-line can get better. And we've seen New England Patriot offensive lines just, have a rotation in terms of who's starting. And we've seen some very good O-lines from New England, John, yourself. So
don't tell the fans that, or I'll get crucified.
But so I think being active in terms of if someone falls, like if someone gets cut, keep an eye on them, keep tabs on them. You don't have to sign any of them, but just knowing that, hey, the Texans were interested. The Texans brought someone in to work out. The Texans are monitoring this, letting you know that, you're not satisfied, with the product there, because we don't know what the product is there. And as the season goes on, because I was just talking about, training camp right there, when it comes to the trade deadline, if there's a move that you think you need to make go ahead and get it done. And if you're there, we're talking about this team potentially being dangerous come postseason time. And that's when we're talking about potentially making a trade. I'm really excited. I know last season was a letdown with all the expectations, but this year I feel like I'm ready for this team to prove itself.
Ruben, I love having these conversations with you. And I would ask you about Will Anderson, but I think we can agree on 3 letters, and that's MVP.
I already put 500 to, for him to win Defensive Player of the Year. I did. I had this conversation with the boys. I said, hey, let's each put in 125. I got in Pops in it as well. And, I brought up the stats right before he got injured, and I'm thinking year 3, he's going to turn it up. That's my pick. Defensive Player of the Year, Will Anderson Jr.
So make sure you guys go check out all of the odds on FanDuel right now, our sponsor. Ruben, let everybody know where they can find you, listen to your podcast, watch you on YouTube, all of the great things that you do covering the Houston Texans.
Yeah, and dropping daily Houston Texans content. Just type in 713 Houston Sports. And on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, you can catch me 6 to 6:30 on the Bleacher Report app with my boy Harley, talking Houston Texans football. Once again, John, thank you so much, man. This means the world.
No, thank you for joining me, stopping by. I appreciate it. Make sure you guys follow the Locked On Texan podcast on YouTube at Locked On Texans. Subscribe, like, comment, let us know how you feel, and I'll get into it on Fridays. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Until next time, ladies and gents and Texan fans across the nation, peace.